Family abandoned me when I was 10 years old. Came back 16 years later because they're broke and refuse to leave until I support them. I am 26 years old and the family that abandoned me 16 years ago got in touch with me, and the way I have reacted has been making me wonder if I am the a-hole. I am the oldest daughter in my family. I had 2 siblings after me, one was 3 years younger than me and the other was 5 years younger than me. Overall, I would say we had a decently happy family. Both of my parents worked and I remember coming home and helping them around the house. We did everything a normal family did. We cooked food together, watched movies together, and played games together. I would say we were quite close. When I was 9, my dad lost his job. Apparently, someone in his work blamed my dad for things he did not do and he got sacked. My mom, who was working in school, barely earned enough money to feed 5 mouths single-handedly. So they told me that it would be great if I could live with my grandparents until dad was back on his feet. It sounded like a good idea. I did not mind. I packed everything and went off to live with my grandparents. That summer was something because I stayed with my grandparents at their farm and took care of animals. It was a good time. I liked it. But I did not know what was going to follow would break me. When my classes were about to resume, I called my parents and they said that they were still working on arranging for places and would like me to stay a few days with my grandparents. They promised that they were almost back on their feet and everything was almost ready. Dad got a new job. In the place where he got the new job, they were providing him with living quarters, so they were in the process of moving in that area. Once they had moved in, they would get me from grandparents' house. I was supposed to be there with them for a week more tops, but my parents never called again. That 1 week went by too quickly, but the days after that dragged on. Every time I called my parents, the phone rang and rang until I reached the voicemail. I asked my grandparents if they knew something, but they didn't. They were in the dark like I was. I asked my grandparents to file a missing persons report, but they didn't. I went to the police station and did it myself, but that resulted in me getting grounded because the police obviously reached out to my grandparents, who insisted I was simply being dramatic. I couldn't understand why they were not worried about the disappearance of my parents. I screamed, cried, and got into arguments with them, but they kept up with the same lie. They didn't know where my parents were. Eventually, I gave up. I asked my grandparents if they could provide me with schooling, as I didn't want to not have a GED, and my grandparents enrolled me in the public school near their place. The school was very different from my previous school. It took me almost a year to get used to everything, but once I was used to it, I started studying as much as I could. I wanted to get out of my grandparents' farm so that I could look for my parents. I hated that nobody was giving me any answers, and I hated that I was seemingly the only one bothered by everything. But everything changed when I was 11. My grandparents' house had 2 phones, one in the kitchen and the other in the living room. They were connected, and well, you can guess where this is going. My grandmother was talking on the phone in the kitchen and she was being awfully quiet while she spoke. My interest piqued and I decided to listen in. It was my mom. I knew I wasn't imagining it because Grandma called her by her name. They were talking about me, how I've been doing in school, etc., and hearing her voice made it difficult for me to keep quiet. Before I could control myself, I called out to her. The moment she heard my voice, the other side went dead. I was screaming and crying into the phone, hoping if I smacked it enough, I would be able to hear her voice again. Grandma came out of the kitchen and told me to go to my room. I went off on her, asking why she hid my mother from me and why she wasn't telling me anything, but that did not change anything. Grandma refused to tell me anything and I had to accept that my parents had essentially abandoned me. Soon after that, my grandparents sent me to a distant aunt. She lived a 5-hour drive away from my grandparents' farm, and I knew that my parents knew they were sending me there. At least I would like to think they knew. I sometimes wondered why they sent me away, if I was a bad child and other things like that, but I never had an answer. My aunt, who was my mom's distant cousin, was an amazing person. From the day I came to live with her, she was understanding. When I asked her why my parents left me, she told me that she did not know, and she said it with so much sincerity that I could believe it. My parents were never close with this specific aunt, so I believed her. But she was there whenever I needed her. Every time I would wake up crying or have a meltdown, my aunt helped me work through my emotions. She even suggested I get into therapy because that would do me well. At first, I was not interested in it, but once I started going there regularly, I realized how beneficial it was for me. My aunt helped me with work, and she treated me like I was a person. She validated my emotions, which my grandparents never did. I lived with my aunt since I was 13, and when I finished high school, my aunt was there for me, instead of my mother. But then again, by that time, my aunt was the most important person in my life. My aunt was a veterinary nurse, and following in her footsteps, I started studying to be a veterinary doctor. My aunt became my sole parent and I was happy with it. I was 21 when I presented her with the papers for my adoption. I wanted her to be my parent legally and my aunt agreed. I could not have been happier. I finished my degree and now I work as an intern to gain experience. As my hospital is away from my home, I have decided to move into a different apartment. I still drop by my aunt's place whenever I have time. 2 days ago, on my day off, I was relaxing in my house when my doorbell rang. I was expecting to see the delivery man from the DoorDash, but instead, it was my family. It was my mom and dad and my youngest brother. They looked like strangers and yet familiar. I could not find the words to express how I felt. My parents looked at me and gave me an envelope. Inside it was a letter written by my grandparents. It stated that I had run away from my grandparents' house and I refused to get in touch with them. I asked them why they were here and with that letter. My mom said that apparently, they had been searching for me for years and because I ran away from my grandparents saying I never want to be in touch with them, I have caused them emotional distress. They wanted me to pay for my brother's education now that I am a doctor because I can afford it and be a good daughter. And if I do not, they will sue me for costing them money when I ran away. I don't know about you, but that did not make any sense to me. How did I cost them money for running away when my grandparents sent me away? Why should I pay for my brother's education? Why should I take care of people who have abandoned me for 16 years? With all these questions in my head, I refused to help them and asked them to leave the premises. When they refused, I called the cops on them. They told the cops that I am their daughter, but I refused. Legally I am my aunt's daughter and I told them her name. When they contacted her, she agreed and that led to my family getting a warning about trespassing and bothering me. Since then, I have been receiving messages on social media from accounts that are owned by my family, calling me in a hole. I told my aunt about everything and she said that while she understands why I did what I did, she doesn't think I did the right thing. What do you guys think? Am I the a-hole? Update 1. Since my last post, my parents have shown up at my work, trying to cause a ruckus. The security of the hospital called the cops on them and escorted them off the hospital ground. I do not understand why suddenly my family, which has abandoned me for years, wants to be in my life. It is bothering me and making me emotionally overwhelmed. My therapist suggests I talk with them to figure out what they want, but I do not want to approach them at all. Update 2. So, a few things have happened. They showed up at the hospital again and they got escorted off the grounds again, but this time I told them that we can talk. I showed up at the place with my aunt and what they said essentially boils down to this. My parents were struggling with money and thought they should send me to my grandparents. Once I was not there, they felt like it would be easier to feed 4 stomachs instead of 5, so they did not want me to come back. They thought they would get me back eventually, but when dad finally got the job, it was barely enough for 4 people, so they did not want me there. My mom and grandmother had been speaking, and when they found out that my aunt was making enough money, grandma sent me to them. My parents knew about it. Now, 16 years later, as I am successful and they do not have any savings, they would like it if I took care of them, and paid for my brothers and stuff. They lied about the letter and they were not going to sue me, they just wanted me to be a good daughter to them. Hearing them say those words broke my heart. With each word, I felt my heart crack, and when everything was said from her end, I told my mom and my dad that I am not doing any of that. They have the eldest child and he is my brother. They abandoned me and legally I am no longer their child. I threatened them with legal action if they ever bothered me again, at home or work. My parents were upset and begging me for forgiveness, but I could not be bothered. I left them and walked away. My therapist thinks I have cast them aside, so I am struggling to feel empathy for them, while the reality is I do not care about them at all. I would wipe them from my memory if I could. Update 3. Since my last update, my family has stopped reaching out to me. On the other hand, I am done with my internship now. I think I should do another residency program before I sit for the NAVL. I am hopeful that I will be okay in the future. Sometimes, I won't lie, I wish I had a good relationship with my parents, but I am okay with having my solo parents. She is a better mother than the other one I know. Opinion 1, not the a-hole op. Your parents abandoned you, lied to you, and left you with your grandparents. You owe them nothing. Opinion 2, not the a-hole. You are only giving them what they gave you. They abandoned you, and I do not know why they were thinking you would not do the same. My sister-in-law, 26 female, and I, 29 female, have always had a complicated relationship, but I thought she was finally mature enough to leave me alone. She couldn't help herself though, and now she's crying about it. I guess problems between us started ever since I started dating my husband. His sister and I were in the same sorority in college, and I actually met him when he was helping her move. We were both at the local bar and struck up a conversation, and we've been together ever since. We've always been really happy together, but for some reason my sister-in-law never really liked me. When she found out we were dating, she literally told me that her brother never gets serious with anyone and that I shouldn't get my hopes up. That was pretty discouraging, of course, and mentally I even prepared myself for heartbreak, even though I really liked her brother. But hey, 6 years later we're still going strong, and he is undoubtedly my favorite human in the world. Even the rest of his family, including my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and every other member of his family that I've met, have been nothing but nice to me, so honestly it kinda baffles me why my sister-in-law seems to hate me so damn much. 2 years ago during our wedding, she created a huge fuss. I didn't want her as my bridesmaid because she has been nothing but cold and condescending to me for as long as I've been with my husband, but she threw a massive tantrum and tried to emotionally manipulate my husband against me. I just wanted the whole drama to be over, so I made her a bridesmaid, and she had the audacity to show up in a white floral dress. That made pretty much everyone angry, and my in-laws made her change into something different by telling her she'd be kicked out of all family events if she doesn't. After this whole incident, she apologized to me, and we've barely seen each other since then, and I genuinely thought she was over that immature behavior. Well, I guess I was wrong. It all started when I found out that I was pregnant with my first child. I was over the moon with excitement and couldn't wait to share the news with my husband, family, and friends. Everyone was excited. However, my sister-in-law's behavior was different. She never seemed happy for us and instead always found a way to make the moment about herself. We announced our pregnancy at a family event, my mother-in-law's birthday, and she almost immediately shifted the conversation to her own experiences with motherhood. She's a single mom and started talking about how difficult it was for her to go through pregnancy alone and that I'm lucky. It made me very uncomfortable. As my due date approached, my sister-in-law offered to throw me a baby shower. At first, I was grateful for the offer and excited to celebrate with my family and friends. However, my excitement turned to suspicion when my sister-in-law insisted on hosting the shower where she lived, which is around 1,200 miles away from where we live. She said that she wanted to make it a surprise at a beautiful venue owned by her friends so we would get a luxury event without paying, but I couldn't help but feel like she was up to something. When I told my husband about my concerns, he assured me that his sister was just trying to do something special for us and that I was reading too much into it. He even rearranged some really important meetings so that we could attend the supposed baby shower. My husband and I flew there with both my parents. My in-laws were not able to attend because they were supposed to be out of the country during that time. We arrived at the location, which turned out to be this incredibly fancy resort type of place. But as soon as we walked in, I knew something was off. The decorations were all pink and blue, but there were a bunch of people there that I didn't know. We walked in extremely confused and saw that there was another couple there who were the center of attention. The woman was dressed in the exact same white dress as me. It was given to me by sister-in-law for the party specifically, and she was also very pregnant. My heart sank, and I knew that my suspicions were right all along. My sister-in-law had tricked us into attending her friend's baby shower under the guise of it being a surprise for me. She wanted to humiliate me by making it seem like I was stealing attention from the woman whose party it was. On the other hand, she had told her friend that her brother and sister-in-law were in town and would love to be part of their celebrations, so they were expecting us as guests, and in turn, we were greeted with what they must have thought was some crazy jealous woman looking to steal all her thunder. I was hurt and humiliated and left the party crying as soon as I figured out what was going on. But my husband was livid. He immediately called out his sister for her behavior, and she didn't like it one bit. She started making excuses and saying that it was all a misunderstanding, but my husband wasn't having it. He called his parents and explained what had happened, and they were equally shocked and angry. They had no idea that their daughter was capable of such behavior and were embarrassed by her actions. But what really hit my sister-in-law where it hurt was when her parents decided to cut her off financially. She had been working as a design intern and had plans of opening her boutique, funded by my in-laws, very soon. They had been supporting her financially for years, and she relied on their money to pay for her fancy lifestyle. But after what she did to me, they decided to stop giving her money and to let her fend for herself. My father-in-law even told her that he wouldn't be paying for her boutique and told her not to show up at their door until she learned how to act like an adult. They apologized to me for their daughter's behavior and made it clear that they were on my side. Of course, now my sister-in-law is furious and blamed me for everything, saying that I was overreacting and making a big deal out of nothing. She is saying that I've destroyed her career and ruined everything she has worked for her whole life. I told her that I didn't ask my in-laws to do anything and this is her decision, but she said I must stop them and tell them I forgive her. She's also trying to manipulate me, saying I'm doing something terrible to a single mom, which is making me feel very guilty. At the same time, I believe that she deserves this punishment. Am I the a-hole for letting my in-laws cut my sister-in-law off financially? Update 1. I have to make some clarifications regarding my sister-in-law because many of you are attacking my in-laws for abandoning their grandchild because they cut her off financially. My sister-in-law is not poor. It's not like she will be out on the streets with her son as a consequence of this. She just has to live frugally now and figure out how to get her boutique running on her own. Apart from that, I'm sure if my in-laws thought that their grandchild was any real danger, they would immediately step in. Honestly, I'm pretty sure they won't hold a grudge for a very long time anyway. They might not pay for the boutique, but they'll definitely start helping her out with her expenses as soon as she admits her mistake and actually apologize to me instead of attacking me for supposedly ruining her life. My husband is 100% on my side and says that I never have to forgive my sister-in-law or even speak to her ever again. He's so sweet. He apologized for not stepping in earlier and taking stronger steps to keep her away from me. My sweet mother-in-law is actually throwing me a real baby shower, and she has promised that I'll have an amazing time celebrating our baby and that I'll forget all about what my sister-in-law did. Update 2. My sister-in-law crashed my baby shower. The day of the shower arrived, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. My mother-in-law decorated her backyard beautifully, and there was delicious food and drinks for everyone. My husband and I were enjoying ourselves, chatting with our friends and family members, and opening the gifts that people had brought for us. However, things took a turn when my sister-in-law arrived. She had found out about the party from social media and was furious. She created a huge scene in front of all the guests, saying how her parents weren't supporting her financially but had no problem throwing an elaborate party for me when I didn't deserve something so special since I wasn't even a real part of their family. She was nearly screaming at this point and said that I didn't deserve something so special since I wasn't even a part of their family. They were terrible parents because they didn't throw their daughter a baby shower but had one for me. At that point, my mother-in-law had enough and she dragged my sister-in-law out of the garden. She returned around 15 minutes later, apologized to the guests about the disturbance, and told everyone to enjoy the party. After everyone left, my mother-in-law and father-in-law apologized to me several times and even suggested that I should get a restraining order against my sister-in-law to make sure she doesn't bother me again. I don't think that I want to take things that far, but we've decided to keep all news regarding the baby away from social media so she can't stalk us. The whole thing is just insane and I cannot believe how jealous this woman can be. It's simply incredible how she has ruined not one, but 2 whole baby showers with her immaturity. Update 3. I forgot to mention in my last update that the reason my in-laws weren't supportive of my sister-in-law during her pregnancy is because she was having the child out of wedlock when she was quite young, 21, and they're a bit traditional. They did come around once the baby was born though. But I guess my sister-in-law still holds resentment. I haven't heard from her since the baby shower. My in-laws have said that they're going to cut her off permanently because of the way she embarrassed the whole family in front of so many people. Honestly, I don't care anymore. I just want this whole thing to be over and focus on myself and my baby.